Hello and welcome to the Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm your host, Macie Renae, and we are going on a journey together, my friend. If you've been looking for a podcast geared towards your growth, self-awareness, navigating your brain's daily mind drama, and deep inner work to become your highest and best self, you are in the perfect place. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm Macie Renae and I am excited that you're back. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. I hope that you enjoy the content that I share with you guys and that you'll return. And if you are a returning listener, I just want to say thank you so much for all the love and support, the feedback, the ratings, the written reviews. I appreciate all of it and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you so much for sharing with me that you are getting some good nuggets from this podcast. That is exactly what I hope you get out of this, is some transformational information that just helps you, put one step in front of the other in your life and hopefully become your highest and best self. So I'm really thankful that you're here and that you're listening and that you're enjoying the podcast. Today, we are going to talk about thoughts and the power of your thoughts. And it's kind of going to go into other things, like other topics that I'll be discussing later on in this podcast. So first and foremost, I think it's important to help people understand the power behind your thoughts and where those thoughts come from and how it impacts your life. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And also, I recognize that there are people of all backgrounds listening to this podcast, meaning that some of you have maybe had a ton of personal development. You love reading the books. You love, listening to all kinds of personal development content. Maybe you have a coach. Maybe you've worked with a coach in the past. And then there are people that have maybe never even heard of what a life coach does. They don't really know about personal development. That just hasn't been their thing. And now they're listening to this podcast and all of this information is very new to them. So I'm going to back it up. I really want anyone who listens to this podcast to get a greater understanding of this work and what it means to do this work, but more importantly, to implement it in your life. So I'm going to break it down a little bit. And those of you that are very familiar with thought work and mindset work, you might have heard this and maybe it'll ring differently in your ears this time. But then for the people who have maybe never heard this, hopefully this gives them a greater understanding of what this work is all about. So I touched on this a little bit in, I think, my first episode about why change can be so hard. But what I really want to point out to you is how the mind works. And our mind was truly created to protect us. It is the most powerful organ we have, our brain. It's amazing. It's wonderful. It can create whatever we want in the world, but it can also be our biggest enemy because it stores so much information, and that information in the way that we interpret it can help us or hurt us. So the reason that mindset work is so powerful and important, I think, to do is because you have to recognize thoughts that are serving you in your life and thoughts that are not serving you in your life. And you have to understand that at all times, your mind wants comfort. It wants you to be comfortable. It doesn't want you to feel unsafe. It doesn't want you to feel fear. It doesn't want you to worry. It doesn't want you to feel sadness. It is constantly trying to get back to equilibrium and to what feels comfortable and what feels good. So the issue with this is when you go to expand, when you are making decisions to become your highest self and step into a greater you, your brain will automatically come in and say, this is not safe. This isn't feeling good to me. These are the millions of reasons why I can tell you everything is going to go wrong. And if you're not aware of how your mind can do this, it's very easy to just listen to the mind and say, oh, okay, then I will never do it. The issue with that is if you do that forever, you're going to be living the same life forever and ever and ever. So if you do desire to change and to grow and to evolve, which is actually a fundamental human need, it means that understanding the power of your mind and your thoughts is very, very important. A few years ago, I heard a quote when I was in my relationship marketing company that said, thoughts are things. The CEO would always say, thoughts are things. And I have to admit that for the longest time, I didn't understand that quote. Like, it just wasn't hitting me right. It was like, what does that even mean? And so maybe even there's some of you that are listening to this podcast right now and you're like, thoughts are things. What does that mean? And I'm going to give you the breakdown of it. Your thoughts are so powerful that they create an energy. Because what happens is your thoughts create a feeling in your body, and that feeling in your body generates an energy. And what energy you put out in the world is what energy you get back. So when the CEO would say thoughts are things, and that would fly over my head for the longest time, what I've come to find out in doing more and more mindset work and really understanding my thoughts is that what he was actually saying is whatever thoughts you're having, whether it's conscious or subconscious, those thoughts create the feeling in your body that generates what comes next. So that's what he was saying when he would say thoughts are things. So I'm going to give you a breakdown as to how all of this works. So the first thing that we have to start with is circumstances. All of us in life are presented with circumstances. Some of them are good, some of them are crappy, but we all have circumstances. Depending on those circumstances, it will create thoughts in our mind, okay? So think about if your husband loses his job. You're going to have thoughts about it. It's immediately going to make your mind race, and you're going to have all of the thoughts. Whatever thoughts that you are having in your mind are then going to create a feeling in your body. And if we're looking at that same example, your husband loses his job, the thoughts that you're probably having are, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Are we going to have enough money to live? And that thought then creates a feeling in your body, which is more than likely going to be anxiousness. And then what happens, and this is so powerful, is based on how you're feeling in your body, you take action from that place. So maybe the action that you take whenever you're feeling anxious is that you start to spiral out of control. You start to panic. You get very agitated and upset. And then that creates a result in your life. And it might lead to arguing with your husband because you're so stressed out and anxious that now you are blaming him and being very frustrated with him over something that may or may not be under his control. So the reason that this mindset work and thought work is so very powerful is because what you think about creates, again, a feeling in your body. That feeling in your body then creates an action that you do or do not take. And that action that you do or do not take leads to the results that you're getting in your life. Now, this is a very powerful model for being able to observe, okay, what do I have going on in my life? What am I making it mean by the thoughts that I'm having about it? And how is it making me feel? Because based on those answers that you give, you can look and see what your results are. And I love this about mindset work because anytime that I am battling like a negative thought about something, the greatest, most powerful thing that I can share with you is that thoughts are things and you can change what you think about. So a lot of times we live in this victim mentality and we have these negative thoughts and we feel as if it's never going to get better and that we don't have any power to change it, but our power comes from our thoughts. So if you can learn how to change your thoughts about something that is happening in your life, in those circumstances, you can change the result and the outcome that you're getting. And the reason that this is so powerful is because, again, you put out an energy into the universe, into the world. And we don't attract what we want. We attract who we are. Let me let that sink in. We don't attract what we want in life. We attract who we are. So if you are someone that is constantly thinking negative thoughts, what is going to be happening is you are going to be putting out negative energy because you're feeling negative about the thoughts that you're having. And you are going to call in inadvertently and not wanting to, you're going to call in more negativity into your life, okay? On the other hand, if you are someone who has positive thoughts and you see the glass half full, or even that you just acknowledge that there's water in the glass, you are going to have a much different perspective. You're going to have a much different feeling in your body because you're thinking positive thoughts, and therefore you are calling in more of that positive energy in your life. So I'm going to show you some of the ways that this totally bites people in the butt based on their thoughts, because your thoughts are powerful. And again, your thoughts call things in. So you have to be very aware of what are my thoughts and what am I calling in? And it doesn't mean that it's just your conscious thoughts. This could be your subconscious thoughts. And this is what I love about my coaching styles, because I really try to get to those subconscious roots of like, okay, where are you self-sabotaging? Not because of what you think you're actually thinking in your conscious mind, but because of what you've stored in your subconscious mind. I love that. It's like being a detective, and I think that it's really, really fun. So for instance, there could be people in the world that really believe that bad things happen in threes. Okay, there are some people who truly believe that thought. Bad things happen in threes. Now, like I said earlier on in this podcast, is that your brain was created to protect you. It wants to keep you safe, and it is constantly searching for evidence to be right, okay? And because your brain is so very powerful, what you think about, again, creates a feeling in your body, and then you call more of that in. So here's what I see happen with a lot of people, especially on social media, because they choose to share this, and I am just like shaking my head so much. They might say like, oh my gosh, today was a horrible day. My tire popped. What else could possibly go wrong? And I shake my head and I'm thinking, please don't ask that. Because when you have that energy of what else can go wrong, you are sending out an energy asking for evidence of what else can go wrong. So that's what your brain's going to look for, and that's what you're going to find. So then whenever the next thing happens, you're probably having a thought of, oh my gosh, another thing has gone wrong. I'm someone that has so much bad luck. That's another thought. I have so much bad luck, right? Bad things always happen in threes. What's coming next? And then what you do, that creates a feeling in your body of like anticipation that something else might be coming. And then you call that in. And so like the third thing goes wrong, like maybe your washer or dryer breaks down. And then you say, oh my gosh, my washer and dryer broke down. I have such bad luck. See, I'm the most unlucky person. I told you guys that everything bad always happens in threes. And by this point, I am face palming myself, shaking my head, and laying on the floor going, no, because you have called all of it in, because your thoughts are things, your thoughts are powerful. Those thoughts created an energy in your body. You're much stronger than you think, people. I promise you. Whoever is listening to this, you are so much more powerful than you think. And when you're thinking those thoughts then create an energy in your body because of what you're feeling. I know I keep beating this into your brain, but I really want you to understand it. So then you're feeling anticipation or anxiety or what else could go wrong. No, I don't want anything else to go wrong. We can't afford for anything to go wrong. Why does bad luck always happen to me? Bad things always happen to me. I'm the most unlucky person. All of those things are thoughts. They're all mind drama. It's all thoughts that are not serving you, okay? All of those things are thoughts that are not serving you. And when you believe them, your brain's job is to search for evidence. I'm sorry if I'm screaming in the mic. I'm very passionate about this. Your brain's job is to search for evidence that it can be right. So based on all of this, not only are you calling in energy very powerfully, and it gives you that, it receives it, right? And it's like, oh, okay, she wants more of this, even though you really don't, but that's what you're calling in. You receive more of it, and then your brain goes, see, we're always right. You are unlucky. See, bad things do happen in threes. It looks for the evidence to be right, and then you witness it because you called it in, okay? You called it in. Now you're witnessing it. And then your brain solidifies that thought. And the more that you do this, the more that it becomes a subconscious wired pattern. And the longer that you hold on to that belief that's not serving you, the more you're going to call it in. The more evidence you will find for being someone that has bad luck, for being someone where bad things always happen in threes. Is this making sense? I really hope that it's making sense. I will do 10 podcasts on this topic if you need me to. I also teach this to my clients because I'm like, oh my gosh, if everybody could just understand like how powerful the mindset work is, how powerful your thoughts are. It's the same with money. So people have money beliefs about things, and whatever beliefs you have around money creates what they call a money temperature. And if you have limits around money, you will always make the same amounts of money. Not because you're not capable, but because your thoughts will stop you from getting any further. This is the case with anything, your dreams, your visions, your aspirations, your goals. In order to achieve and to change, right? Whatever you want to change in your life, the first step is recognizing what thoughts you have about it. Okay, so now for some real life examples. This one's a silly one, but I absolutely love it. A few years ago, I was listening to a podcast and she talked about how she had some negative thoughts about a very neutral circumstance. So remember how I told you guys that we all have circumstances, and the thing about circumstances is they're neutral until we give them meaning. And I may do another podcast on that, but what she described was how she went over to her neighbor's house. Her neighbors love to play cards together, so it was a wife and husband duo, and she went over there to play cards. I love this example because I totally relate. And during the card game, the husband started to whistle, and the whistling continued. He just whistled and whistled and whistled and whistled, and finally, she snapped, and she was like, Stop with the whistling. It is ruining my concentration. I am not able to focus on the card game. You have to stop. And she lost her mind, right? And then she looked over at his wife and she was like, how are you focusing on the card game? The whistling is out of control. The whistling has to stop. And the wife was like, I'm not bothered by it. It's totally fine. I'm not bothered at all by the whistling. And in that moment, she realized that the circumstance was the husband is whistling. Okay, that's it. He's whistling during cards. The wife was not having any thoughts about it. So she did not feel agitated. She didn't feel anxious. So that means she didn't yell at him, which means the result is she was just able to focus on the card game. However, the one that was upset was having thoughts like, whistling is annoying. I hate whistling. I cannot concentrate whenever he's whistling. Okay, those are all thoughts. And when she was having those thoughts, what it did was create a feeling in her body of agitation and annoyance. And then the action she took was yelling at him because she was so annoyed. And the result is that he, A, stopped whistling, or B, just continued to whistle, and she had to get over it. Okay? But I loved this example because it was the first time for me where I was able to see, okay, that really, circumstances are just circumstances until our thoughts create meaning. And it was a very clear indicator of how, depending on the thoughts that you're having about that circumstance, depends on the actions and the feelings and the results that you're getting. So for him, he's just whistling. That's just the circumstance. And what it taught me was everybody has different thoughts about sometimes the same circumstances. And that's what creates the results that we're getting in our life. And so when I was able to see this, I was then able to implement more of this thought work into my life. So for me, whenever I'm in an environment and maybe I'm observing that people around me are getting agitated or frustrated or upset, I really now think about, okay, what are their thoughts in this situation? What are my thoughts in this situation? So for instance, let's say that you go to, the DMV, or you have to go get a new license made. I don't know where you live, but when I lived in Louisville, that was like a very long and tedious task. You were going to be there for hours, especially if you didn't get there first thing when they opened. So now that I'm an observer of my thoughts, I'm able to see like how this neutral circumstance of sitting and waiting at the DMV, impacts, or the county clerk office impacts people in different ways. But the circumstance is literally neutral. It's that we all have to wait to be called on, for them to, pull our number and call on us to be waited on. And I may be sitting there and feel like, this is going to take a while. I don't want to be here, and that's going to create a feeling in my body, whereas somebody else could be there and be like, they can have a thought like, I can hang out here all day, have nothing else to do, and that creates a feeling in their body of being more relaxed and just patiently waiting for being called on. And then you might have someone who is having thoughts like, I'm in a rush, I don't have time for this all day, and then that creates a feeling of like anxiousness and frustration. And so all of us create our own results in our life based on the thoughts that we're having. So thought work is very, very important. And I wanted to set the foundation of what thought work is and how mindset works and how I look at thoughts, because the more that we get into this podcast, the more that I teach you in this podcast, it's going to be very important for you to understand like how the mind works, and, understanding that as a whole, so that way when we get into more complex topics, you're not completely lost, hopefully. I'm going to do my best to explain and to, give you a lot of examples. But one last thing that I wanted to point out is what happens is in our life, we create thoughts about the things that we are experiencing, especially as a child. So before the age of 12, our brain has not basically matured into a brain that is able to reason and logic with what is happening in our life. So for instance, let's say that you're 7 years old and your mom and dad divorce, and at that point, your mom and dad have a mature enough brain to say, these are the reasons that we're getting divorced, and it didn't work out, and this and this happened, and we weren't able to work through it. Like, their brain can process why that decision is being made, and they can understand it. But for a child under the age of 12, they don't have this same ability to reason and logic what is going on in their environment and what is going on in their world. And so what their little brain does is it takes in the information like a sponge, and it immediately makes them feel something. So they can't say like, oh, mom and dad are getting a divorce because of XYZ. All they know is how they feel. This is really important. All they know is how they feel. So whatever they feel creates their perception and their thoughts about the situation, okay? And then whenever that happens, that child takes the way that they feel and what they're thinking about that, even if that's actually not what's happening, right? Like, they create almost their own thoughts in their mind and their own feeling in their body. And then they take that on with them a lot of times to adulthood. And I swear to you, this is like what I work with my clients primarily, is what things happened in childhood. How did you perceive things in childhood that you've carried on into your adulthood? And the reason that I work with this with my clients is because that is some big work that I had to do in my healing journey. Like in my mindset work, in coaching with my coach, most of what I was taking on in adulthood came from the way that I felt as a child. So what would happen is I would feel triggered in my adult life by something, and realistically, I knew that what I was triggered by was not actually as big of a deal as my brain was making it seem, but I would be like very flustered by it, very frustrated, very sad, and I'd almost have like this over emotional reaction to something. And the more research that I did and the more that I understood mindset work helped me realize that whatever circumstance I experienced as an adult would trigger how I felt as a kid based on something that I had interpreted in the world, right? Something that was happening in my world, maybe with my family, all that I would do, like all that I would recognize is how I felt back then. And then in my current life, when something would happen, it would trigger that feeling and that same emotional response. And then all of a sudden my brain would have flashbacks of when this happened as a kid, this was how I handled it. That's how I have to handle it as an adult. And so sometimes it's our subconscious mind drama and our subconscious thoughts and patterns that are sabotaging us the most, because we hear things growing up. Our parents have beliefs, they respond to things a certain way, they act a certain way. And because our childlike brain can't really choose how we want to think about it and how we want to feel, our body just feels a feeling and interprets whatever's going on as fact. So we don't have the same logical reasoning that we do as an adult that has a mature brain. And because of that, a lot of times we end up acting maybe the same way that our parents did, or responding the same way that our family members did. Not because we necessarily want to, but because it takes more brain power to change the pattern, because that pattern becomes instilled subconsciously. So I think I'll do another podcast on that, because that can be something that's a little bit more complex. But I hope that this podcast helps you understand the importance and power of thought work in your mindset. So just to reiterate for you again, you are presented with circumstances in your life. Those circumstances are neutral. They have no meaning until you give them meaning, okay? So that is why when you are presented with a circumstance, one person may respond over the top, another person might be very, very calm. The reason for that is because you're having different thoughts about that same exact circumstance, okay? Now, when that circumstance occurs, you're going to have thoughts about it. Those thoughts then generate a feeling in your body. That feeling creates an energy, okay? It's going to tell you, how are we feeling right now? Are we feeling frustrated? Are we feeling sad? Are we feeling depressed? Are we feeling agitated? Are we feeling happy? Are we feeling excited? And based on the feeling that you have in your body, you are then going to take action, okay? And that action may be going and doing something. It may be doing nothing at all. If you're depressed, you might do nothing at all. If you're feeling excited, you might go do what you need to do. And then based on the action you do or do not take, it then creates a result in your life. So the importance of this work is knowing that if you don't like the result that you're getting in your life, you need to look at your thoughts and how it's making you feel. Or you need to really sink into your body and understand how you're feeling, and then look at the thoughts that you're having, okay? And the most important thing to remember is that you can change your result, you can change the way that you feel, and you can change your thoughts. You are responsible for your results, for your thoughts, and for how you feel and the actions that you are taking. And if you can take your power back and know that this is all able to be changed, like your whole life can change based on your thoughts. You can choose a different thought, truly. If you can accept that and really embody that, everything for you can be different. And I hope that you take your power back and that this podcast helps you. I'm going to get into more complex topics with this. I'm going to give you more real life examples about this in my life, of how this has impacted me, of things that I've overcome, of how I've been able to forgive and build stronger relationships because of this work. It is very powerful stuff if you can just let it sink in. And so this podcast might be, this episode might be something you have to listen to more than once. And it may be something that goes over your head the first few times, or it may make total sense. Whatever it is, just welcome it, listen to it. And if your brain tries to tell you this isn't relevant information, again, your brain is created to protect you and keep you safe. So if you listen to a podcast ever and you kind of doze off and you start thinking, what do I want for lunch tomorrow? What do I need to do tomorrow? You know, what did my kiddo grab her homework this morning? Like, if your brain starts to run away when you're absorbing new information, I want you to know that that's what it's made to do. It wants to protect you and keep you safe. It doesn't already know this information. So to your brain, it feels complex and hard, and it doesn't want to have to work extra to change. So if you notice that you do get tired or distracted or your mind wanders, just reel it back in and say, brain, I really would like to absorb this information. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to evolve. I'm trying to change. Let's come back. And I have to do that with podcast episodes I'm listening to of mentors I really adore. I might get it 15 minutes into an episode and then all of a sudden I'm in la la land and I have to rewind the podcast like 4 minutes because I started daydreaming. And that is because my brain feels uncomfortable. It doesn't want to take in new information. It doesn't feel relevant in that moment. And I really have to train my brain to be open to new information and new learning and, can tell my brain like, hey, we're trying to stick around. We're trying to grow into our highest self. So I'm going to need you to rewind that 4 minutes so that you can catch what they're saying because it's probably important since you tried to ignore it. So if you catch that, just know it's a part of the process. I hope that this podcast episode helped you, and if you have any feedback or have any questions, just know you can reach out to me. You can connect with me on social media. My Instagram handle is Macie Renae _ that's MACIE RENAE _, and then on Facebook you can find me at Macie Renae. Hope you have a great day, a great week, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey girls, before you go anywhere, I just want to remind you that my Inner Mastery 12-week coaching program is launching again on September 4th, and the last day to enroll is August 31st. If you are loving the content that you're hearing in this podcast, it is that and so much more. Inner Mastery is a 12-week course dedicated to your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It is designed to help you dive deep and uncover why you're engaging in self-sabotaging behaviors that keep you from living your ideal life. So if you're tired of standing in your own way, this program was designed for you. And what's even better is that if you're loving the podcast content, you're getting all of the attention you need with these topics. You can easily enroll under MacieRenae.com, click the Let's Talk Coaching tab, scroll down to group coaching, and you will find 3 different payment plan options there. As soon as you're enrolled, I will be mailing you your customized coaching workbook, and then you will be in a group of women ready to grow and expand. It should be a lot of fun. This is a program that so many women have great transformation in, and like I said, if you're loving the podcast content, it is that and so much more with all of the needs that you have and my time dedicated to you personally. So if that is something that you're interested in, but you still have questions, feel free to reach out. And I want to remind you that if you want to win a free Kate Spade handbag, and trust me, she's a beauty, all you have to do is go to Apple iTunes, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, leave a written review. I'm going to be putting all the names and usernames of the people who leave the written review in a random generator, and then on September 1st, I am drawing for someone to win a beautiful brand new hand-picked Kate Spade bag. She is absolutely gorgeous. So if this is something that you're interested in, please remember to do that if you feel compelled, and I will talk to you ladies soon. Bye-bye.